The crystal chandeliers of the Grand Imperial Hotel blazed with light so bright that Simone had to squint when she first entered the ballroom. She stood near the entrance, her hands clasped in front of her silver evening gown, watching the crowd of wealthy guests mingle and laugh. Somewhere in this sea of designer suits and jeweled dresses was her ex-husband Julian, and just thinking about seeing him again made her stomach twist into knots. She spotted him by the champagne fountain. Of course he was there, right in the center of attention where he always loved to be. Julian looked exactly the same as he did 2 years ago when their divorce was finalized, tall, handsome, with that confident smile that used to make her heart flutter. Now it just made her feel cold inside. The woman hanging on his arm was Brooke. His wife now. The woman he left Simone for. Brooke wore a red dress that probably cost more than Simone used to spend on groceries for a month back when she was struggling. Her blonde hair was swept up in an elegant twist, and she laughed at something Julian whispered in her ear. Simone took a deep breath and walked toward the bar. She needed water, maybe something stronger. Her heels clicked on the marble floor, and she kept her chin up even though her heart was pounding. She had every right to be here. She'd been personally invited by Theodore Whitmore himself, and this was his gala. As she passed by Julian and Brooke, she slowed down just slightly. Some small, foolish part of her wondered if he would notice her, if he would say hello, if he would show even a flicker of recognition that she existed. Julian was talking to another couple, his hand resting possessively on Brooke's waist. Simone was now less than 5 feet away from him, close enough to smell his cologne, close enough to see the wrinkles at the corners of his eyes when he smiled. He looked right past her. His gaze swept over her like she was part of the furniture, like she was a waiter carrying an empty tray, like she was nothing at all. Simone felt the moment like a physical blow to her chest. She kept walking, forcing her feet to move, forcing her face to stay calm. Behind her, she heard Brooke's high-pitched giggle and Julian's deep voice saying something about their vacation to Monaco. She reached the bar and ordered water with shaking hands. The bartender gave her a sympathetic look that made her wonder if her pain was written all across her face. She took the glass and moved to a corner of the ballroom where she could breathe. This was the man she had spent 8 years of her life with. The man she had cooked breakfast for every Sunday morning. The man she had supported through his career struggles and celebrated with during his victories. The man she had loved with everything she had. And now she was invisible to him. The room began to quiet down. Someone was tapping a microphone at the front of the ballroom, near the stage where a large screen had been set up. Simone recognized Mr. Patterson, Theodore Whitmore's head attorney. He was a serious man with gray hair and wire-rimmed glasses. "Ladies and gentlemen," Mr. Patterson's voice boomed through the speakers. "Thank you all for attending this evening. We have gathered you here for a very important announcement regarding Mr. Theodore Whitmore's estate." The crowd murmured with curiosity. Simone felt her chest tighten. Theodore had been sick for the past few weeks, but he'd insisted the gala go on as planned. He told her this event was important, that she needed to be here, but he hadn't explained why. "As many of you know," Mr. Patterson continued, his voice somber now, "Mr. Whitmore passed away peacefully in his sleep 2 nights ago." Gasps filled the room. Simone felt tears spring to her eyes. She had known Theodore was ill, but she hadn't realized how close to the end he was. He had been like a father to her over the past 2 years. He had seen value in her when no one else did. He had given her a chance when she had nothing. "Mr. Whitmore left very specific instructions for tonight," Mr. Patterson said. "He wanted his will to be read publicly at this gala, in front of all of you. He said transparency was important, and he wanted no confusion about his final wishes." The crowd was completely silent now. Simone could see Julian near the front, his arms still around Brooke, both of them watching the stage with intense interest. Everyone in this room knew Theodore Whitmore was worth billions. His empire included hotels, real estate, technology investments, and more. Whoever inherited his fortune would become one of the most powerful people in the country. Mr. Patterson pulled out a document and cleared his throat. "I'll read the relevant portion now. These are Mr. Whitmore's exact words, recorded and witnessed by multiple attorneys 6 months ago." Simone's hands were shaking so badly she had to set down her water glass. 6 months ago. That was right after she had organized Theodore's birthday celebration. The event where he'd told her she reminded him of his late wife, strong, kind, and real in a world full of fake people. "I, Theodore James Whitmore," Mr. Patterson read, "being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament. After much consideration and observation, I leave the entirety of my estate, including all financial assets, properties, business holdings, and investments, to Miss Simone Clark." The room exploded. People shouted in confusion and shock. Cameras flashed from the news reporters who had been invited to cover the event. Simone stood frozen in her corner, certain she had heard wrong. That couldn't be right. That couldn't be her name. But Mr. Patterson was still reading. Miss Clark has demonstrated over the past 2 years the character, integrity, and wisdom necessary to steward this fortune responsibly. She has been like a daughter to me and I trust her completely with my legacy. The estimated total value of this estate is $4.7 billion. $4.7 billion. Simone couldn't breathe. The room was spinning. Everyone was turning around, looking for her, pointing and whispering. Security guards were already moving toward her position, ready to escort her to the front. And there, in the middle of the crowd, Julian's face had gone completely white. His mouth hung open in shock. Brooke looked like someone had dumped ice water over her head. They were staring at her now. Everyone was staring at her now. The invisible woman was invisible no more. 3 years earlier, Simone had believed she had the perfect life. She woke up that Tuesday morning in the home she shared with Julian, a nice 3-bedroom house in a good neighborhood with a yard big enough for the children they planned to have someday. The sun was streaming through the bedroom curtains, and she could hear birds singing outside. Julian was already up, which wasn't unusual. He was ambitious and hardworking, qualities Simone had always admired about him. She found him in the kitchen, dressed in one of his sharp suits, gulping down coffee while checking his phone. "Morning," she said, moving to the coffee maker. "Do you want me to make you some eggs before you go?" "No time," Julian said without looking up from his phone. "I have an early meeting with a client. Big potential account." "That's exciting," Simone said. She poured herself coffee and leaned against the counter, watching him. "Is this the Peterson account you've been working on?" "Yeah." He finally looked up at her, but his eyes were distracted, already somewhere else. "Listen, I might be late tonight. We're doing a dinner meeting with the whole team to close the deal." "Oh." Simone tried not to sound disappointed. This was the 3rd late night this week. "Okay. I'll just save you some dinner." "Don't wait up," Julian said. He grabbed his briefcase and keys. "Love you." He kissed her cheek quickly and was gone before she could respond. Simone stood in the kitchen, holding her coffee mug, listening to his car pull out of the driveway. The house felt very quiet and very empty. She told herself this was normal. Julian worked in sales, and closing big accounts required extra time and effort. She had always supported his career. When they first got married, she had her own job at a marketing firm, but Julian had encouraged her to quit 2 years ago so she could focus on managing their home. He said it would be better once they had kids, and that his income was enough for both of them. Simone had agreed because she trusted him, because she loved him, because she thought they were building a life together. The weeks went by, and Julian's late nights became more frequent. He was always apologetic, always stressed, always promising it would calm down soon. Simone tried to be understanding. She kept the house perfect, made his favorite meals, and gave him space when he came home exhausted. But something felt wrong. She couldn't quite name it, but there was a distance growing between them that hadn't been there before. When Julian was home, he was on his phone constantly. When she tried to talk to him about their day, he seemed annoyed or distracted. When she reached for him in bed at night, he was always too tired. "Maybe we should plan a weekend away," Simone suggested one evening over dinner. "Just the two of us. We haven't had quality time together in months." Julian barely looked up from his plate. "I can't take time off right now, Simone. You know how busy work is." "I know, but maybe just one weekend." "I said I can't." His voice was sharp, harder than she'd ever heard him speak to her before. "Why can't you understand that I'm trying to build something here? I'm working hard for us, for our future." Simone felt tears sting her eyes, but she blinked them back. "I'm sorry. I know you're working hard." The tension at the dinner table was thick enough to cut. Julian finished his meal in silence, then went to his home office and closed the door. Simone cleaned up the kitchen alone, her hands moving automatically while her mind raced with questions she was afraid to ask. A few weeks later, Simone ran into her friend Patricia at the grocery store. Patricia had worked with Julian at his company before taking a job at a different firm. "Simone." Patricia gave her a hug. "How are you? I feel like I haven't seen you in forever." "I'm good," Simone said, trying to sound cheerful. "How's your new job?" "Great. Really great." Patricia paused, then lowered her voice. "Hey, I've been meaning to ask. How are things with Julian? Is everything okay?" Simone felt her stomach drop. "What do you mean?" Patricia looked uncomfortable. I saw him having dinner with Brooke from his office a few weeks ago. At that Italian place downtown. They looked pretty cozy and I thought maybe you guys were having problems or something. Brooke? Simone tried to keep her voice steady. His assistant? Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it was just a work thing, Patricia said quickly, but her eyes said she didn't believe that at all. I probably shouldn't have mentioned it. Simone forced a smile. No, it's fine. I'm sure it was just work. But it wasn't fine. That night, after Julian came home late again, Simone lay awake in bed while he snored beside her. Brooke. She'd met Brooke a few times at company events. She was young, maybe 26, with blonde hair and a bright smile. Julian had mentioned her occasionally, always in the context of work. She was efficient, he said. A hard worker. Good at her job. Simone told herself she was being paranoid. Patricia had probably misread the situation. Julian wouldn't cheat on her. They were married. They loved each other. They had plans for their future. But doubt had planted itself in her mind, and once it was there, it grew like a weed. She started noticing things she'd been blind to before. The way Julian smiled at his phone when he got certain text messages. The new cologne he started wearing. The fact that he was suddenly very interested in going to the gym and updating his wardrobe. The way he pulled away when she tried to kiss him. One afternoon, when Julian was in the shower, Simone did something she'd never done before. She picked up his phone from the nightstand. Her hands were shaking as she tried his passcode, their anniversary date. It didn't work. He changed it. That was the moment Simone knew, deep in her gut, that her perfect life was a lie. You don't change your phone password unless you have something to hide. She set the phone down and walked to the bedroom window, looking out at their backyard where she'd imagined their future children playing. Her chest felt tight, like someone was squeezing her heart with both hands. The shower turned off. Julian would come out in a few minutes, get dressed, and probably tell her he had to run to the office for something. And Simone would smile and say okay, because she didn't have the courage yet to confront what she knew was true. Her marriage was dying and she had no idea how to save it. The truth came crashing down on a cold October evening, 3 months after Simone's conversation with Patricia. Julian had been especially distant lately, coming home late almost every night and barely speaking to her when he was home. Simone felt like she was living with a stranger. That particular evening, Julian had told her he was going to a work conference in Chicago for 3 days. He'd be leaving tomorrow morning, and he was packing his suitcase in their bedroom while Simone folded laundry on the bed. What hotel are you staying at? She asked, trying to sound casual. The Sheraton downtown, Julian said without hesitation. Why? Just in case I need to reach you. He gave her an annoyed look. You can just call my cell phone, Simone. I know. I just wondered. Julian zipped up his suitcase with more force than necessary. I'm going to take a shower and head to bed early. Got to be up at 5 for my flight. He disappeared into the bathroom. Simone sat on the bed, staring at his suitcase. Something felt wrong about this trip. Something felt wrong about everything lately. Before she could talk herself out of it, she reached for Julian's briefcase on his nightstand. Her heart pounded as she opened it. Inside were the usual things: folders, pens, business cards. But tucked into the front pocket was a hotel reservation printout. Simone pulled it out with trembling fingers. The Grand Lux Hotel. A suite reservation for 2 guests. Check in tomorrow. Check out in 3 days. The Grand Lux wasn't a business hotel. It was romantic, expensive, known for its couples packages. And the reservation showed 2 guests. Simone felt like she couldn't breathe. She put the paper back exactly where she found it and closed the briefcase. The sound of the shower seemed very loud in her ears. She sat on the edge of the bed, her mind racing. She could confront him right now. She could scream and cry and demand the truth. But part of her wasn't ready yet. Part of her still wanted to be wrong. The next morning, Simone woke up early and pretended to be asleep while Julian got ready and left for his conference. After his car pulled out of the driveway, she got up and got dressed. She made herself coffee and sat at the kitchen table, thinking. She spent the whole day in a fog, going through the motions of normal life while her mind spun with possibilities. Maybe the hotel reservation was a mistake. Maybe he was taking a client there. Maybe she was jumping to conclusions. But she knew. Deep down she knew. That evening, Simone made a decision. She called the Grand Lux Hotel and asked to be connected to Julian's room. The receptionist put her through without hesitation. The phone rang twice before someone picked up. Hello. It was a woman's voice. Young and breathless, like she'd been laughing. Simone's blood turned to ice. Who is this? There was a pause. Then, who is this? This is Simone. Julian's wife. Now tell me who the hell you are. She heard fumbling and muffled voices. Then Julian's voice came on the line. Simone. Just her name. Not an explanation. Not an apology. Just her name, spoken in a voice that sounded more annoyed than guilty. You're with her, aren't you? Simone's voice was surprisingly calm. With Brooke. Another pause. Then, yes. That one word shattered something inside Simone. She'd known, but hearing him confirm it made it real in a way that was almost unbearable. How long? She asked. Simone, we should talk about this when I get home. How long, Julian? He sighed like she was being unreasonable. Like she was the problem. A year. Maybe a little more. A year. He'd been cheating on her for over a year. All those late nights. All those work dinners. All those times he'd made her feel crazy for questioning him. I want a divorce, Simone said. The words came out before she'd even fully thought them through, but once they were spoken, she knew they were right. Fine, Julian said. No hesitation. No attempt to fight for their marriage. Just fine, like she'd asked him to pick up milk from the store. We can talk about the details when I get back. He hung up. Simone sat in her kitchen holding the phone, staring at nothing. 8 years of marriage ended with a 3-minute phone call and the word fine. She didn't cry. She felt too numb to cry. She just sat there as the sun went down and the kitchen grew dark around her. When Julian came home 3 days later, he didn't come alone. Brooke was with him. They walked into the house like they owned it, like Simone was the intruder. We need to talk, Julian said. He didn't even have the decency to look embarrassed. Brooke stood beside him, her hand in his, looking at Simone with something that might have been pity or might have been triumph. You brought her here? Simone felt anger starting to burn through the numbness. To our home. It's my home too, Julian said. And Brooke and I are together now. You need to accept that. Simone laughed, a harsh sound that didn't sound like her at all. Accept it? You cheated on me for over a year and you want me to accept it. You let yourself go, Julian said, and his voice was so cold it made Simone take a step back. You stopped caring about your appearance. You stopped being interesting. All you did was stay home and watch TV. Brooke makes me feel alive again. Each word was a knife. Simone looked at this man she'd loved, this man she'd built her life around, and saw a stranger. A cruel stranger who blamed her for his own betrayal. Get out, she said quietly. This is my house too, Julian repeated. If anyone should leave, it's you. And that's when Simone realized how bad this was going to be. Julian wasn't just leaving her. He was going to try to take everything from her. And she was going to have to fight for whatever scraps she could get. The divorce took 6 months. Julian's lawyer was aggressive and expensive. Simone couldn't afford a good attorney, so she went with a cheap one who seemed more interested in settling quickly than fighting for her rights. Because Simone hadn't worked in 2 years and the house was in Julian's name, she got almost nothing. A small settlement that would last her maybe 6 months if she was careful. No alimony because Julian's lawyer argued the marriage was too short and Simone was capable of working. When the papers were finally signed, Simone walked out of the courthouse feeling completely empty. She had no home, no job, no savings to speak of. She had a few suitcases of clothes and personal items. That was all she had left from 8 years of her life. Julian married Brooke 2 months later. Simone saw the photos on social media before she finally blocked both of them. They looked happy. Glowing. Like they were the perfect couple and Simone had just been an unfortunate obstacle in their love story. Simone moved into a tiny studio apartment in a part of town she'd never lived in before. She took a job with a catering company, helping plan and coordinate events. The pay was barely enough to cover rent and food. She sold most of her nice clothes and jewelry to make ends meet. At night, alone in her studio apartment, she would lie on her second-hand mattress and stare at the ceiling, wondering how her life had fallen apart so completely. She'd done everything right. She'd been a good wife. She'd supported her husband. She'd kept a nice home. And somehow she'd still ended up here. Alone. Broken. Invisible. The next 6 months were the hardest of Simone's life. She woke up every morning in her studio apartment with its peeling paint and broken heater, and for a few confused seconds she'd forget where she was. Then reality would crash back in, and she'd have to drag herself out of bed and face another day. Her job with Elegance Catering was exhausting. She'd thought planning events would be glamorous, but mostly it meant long hours on her feet, dealing with demanding clients and cleaning up after parties when everyone else had gone home. Her boss, Mr. Rodriguez, was decent enough but always stressed about money and bookings. The pay was minimum wage plus occasional tips from grateful clients. Simone learned to stretch every dollar. She stopped buying coffee from cafes and made it at home. She shopped at discount grocery stores and learned to cook cheap meals that would last for days. She walked instead of taking buses when she could. She watched other people live the life she used to have and felt like she was on the outside of everything, looking in. The worst part wasn't the financial struggle. It was the loneliness. The friends she'd had during her marriage had all disappeared. Most of them had been Julian's colleagues and their wives, and they'd chosen his side without question. The few friends from before her marriage had drifted away over the years when Simone had focused all her energy on being a wife. She tried calling her old college roommate Lisa once, but the conversation had been awkward. Lisa had her own life now, a busy career and a family. She'd been sympathetic about the divorce but also seemed uncomfortable, like she didn't know what to say. They'd promised to meet for coffee and never did. Simone's parents had passed away in a car accident when she was in her early 20s, and she had no siblings. She was truly alone in a way she'd never been before. One Friday night, about 8 months after her divorce, Simone came home from a particularly brutal event, a wedding where the bride had screamed at her for 20 minutes because the flowers were the wrong shade of pink. She was exhausted, her feet ached, and she smelled like champagne because a drunk groomsman had spilled his glass on her. She climbed the stairs to her third-floor apartment, unlocked the door and stepped inside. The studio was dark and cold. Her neighbor's TV was blaring through the thin walls. The sink was dripping again and she couldn't afford to call the landlord about it. Simone closed the door behind her and just stood there. She looked around at this space that was supposed to be her home but felt more like a cell. At the mattress on the floor because she couldn't afford a bed frame. At the plastic lawn chair that served as her only furniture besides a rickety table. At the tiny refrigerator that hummed too loud and never kept things cold enough. This was her life now. This was what she'd been reduced to. Something inside her broke. Simone slid down the door until she was sitting on the floor, and for the first time since Julian had left her, she let herself really cry. Not the quiet tears she'd shed before, but deep, gasping sobs that came from somewhere in her chest. She cried for her lost marriage, for her lost home, for the future she'd imagined that would never happen. She cried for the woman she used to be who had believed in love and happy endings. She cried until she had no tears left, until her throat was raw and her eyes were swollen. Then she just sat there on the floor, empty and exhausted, wondering if this was how the rest of her life would be. If she'd peaked at 32 and everything from here on out would just be survival. Her phone buzzed with a text from Mr. Rodriguez. It was an assignment for tomorrow, a private dinner party at a mansion in the wealthy part of town. Good pay, he said. Wear all black and be professional. Simone stared at the text for a long time before responding that she'd be there. The next evening, Simone arrived at the address Mr. Rodriguez had given her. It was a massive estate with an iron gate and a long driveway lined with trees. A security guard checked her name against a list before letting her drive her beat-up car through the gates. The mansion was even more impressive up close. It looked like something from a movie, all white columns and huge windows glowing with light. Simone parked in the back where the service vehicles were supposed to go and got out, checking her reflection in the car window. She'd done her best with her appearance, black slacks, a black button-up shirt, her hair pulled back neatly. She looked tired, but at least she looked professional. Inside, the kitchen was massive and bustling with activity. Mr. Rodriguez was already there, directing his small team. There would only be 12 guests at this dinner, but the host wanted everything perfect. 5 courses, wine pairings, impeccable service. Simone, good you're here, Mr. Rodriguez said. You'll be serving and clearing plates. Remember, be invisible. These people don't want to notice the help. Be invisible. Simone almost laughed at that. She'd had a lot of practice being invisible lately. The dinner service began at 7. Simone carried out plates of food that probably cost more than her weekly grocery budget. The guests were exactly what she expected, wealthy, well-dressed people who barely glanced at her as she served them. They talked about business deals and vacation homes and their children's expensive private schools. Simone moved through the dining room like a ghost, refilling wine glasses and clearing plates. She was good at this part of her job. She'd learned to anticipate what people needed before they asked. She'd learned to move quietly and efficiently. But halfway through the third course something went wrong. One of the guests, a middle-aged man with too much wine in him, started getting loud and aggressive with the woman sitting next to him. His voice rose and he grabbed her wrist when she tried to move away. The other guests shifted uncomfortably, but no one intervened. The woman looked frightened, trying to pull her arm away while the man kept gripping it tighter, telling her she was being dramatic. Simone didn't think. She just moved. She walked over to the table with a pitcher of ice water and accidentally tripped, spilling the entire thing directly into the drunk man's lap. He jumped up with a shout, ice cubes falling to the floor. The woman pulled her arm free and moved away quickly. "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry," Simone said, her voice the perfect mix of horrified and apologetic. "I'm so clumsy. Let me get you some towels." The man was furious, sputtering about suing the catering company. But another voice cut through the chaos. "That's quite enough, George." The speaker was an elderly man at the head of the table. He had white hair and sharp blue eyes, and something about his voice made everyone go quiet. "The young lady simply had an accident. You should go home and change. We'll continue dinner without you." George looked like he wanted to argue, but he clearly knew better than to challenge this man. He grabbed his coat and stormed out, dripping water the whole way. The elderly man looked at Simone. "That was well done, Miss Clark." "Simone Clark." "Well, Miss Clark, thank you for your quick thinking. Please continue with dinner." Simone nodded and retreated to the kitchen, her heart pounding. Mr. Rodriguez pulled her aside immediately. "What were you thinking?" he hissed. "You can't just dump water on a guest." "He was hurting that woman," Simone said quietly. Mr. Rodriguez opened his mouth to argue, then sighed. "Just be more careful. These people can destroy our business if they want to." But the evening continued without further incident. When dinner finally ended and the guests began to leave, Simone was cleaning up in the kitchen when someone cleared their throat behind her. She turned to find the elderly man from the head of the table. "Miss Clark," he said. "I'm Theodore Whitmore. This is my home." Simone recognized the name immediately. Theodore Whitmore was a legend in business circles. Billionaire. Philanthropist. Self-made man who'd built an empire from nothing. "Mr. Whitmore," she said. "I hope the rest of dinner was satisfactory." "It was excellent," he said. "But I didn't come here to discuss the food. I wanted to thank you properly for what you did tonight." "That took courage." Simone shrugged. "Anyone would have done the same." "You'd be surprised how often people choose to look away," Theodore said. His eyes were kind but assessing, like he was seeing past her uniform to the person underneath. "Tell me, Miss Clark, are you happy working for the catering company?" The question caught her off guard. "I'm grateful for the work, sir." "That's not what I asked." Simone met his eyes and saw genuine curiosity there. For some reason she found herself being honest. "No, I'm not happy. But I'm surviving and that's enough for now." Theodore nodded slowly. "I'm looking for someone to coordinate my private events. Dinner parties, charity galas, that sort of thing. It would pay considerably more than you're making now. Would you be interested?" Simone's heart skipped. "Are you serious?" "I'm always serious about business, Miss Clark. I've been watching you tonight. You're professional, observant, and you have good instincts. Those are rare qualities." He pulled out a business card. "Think about it and call my assistant next week if you're interested. We'll discuss terms." He left before Simone could fully process what had just happened. She stared at the business card in her hand, Theodore Whitmore's name embossed in gold letters. That night, driving home to her studio apartment, Simone felt something she hadn't felt in months. Oh, maybe, just maybe, her luck was starting to change. Simone spent the entire weekend staring at Theodore Whitmore's business card. She'd propped it up on her rickety table where she could see it from anywhere in her studio apartment. Part of her was convinced she'd imagined the whole thing. Men like Theodore Whitmore didn't just offer jobs to struggling women they'd met once at a dinner party. But the card was real, heavy, and expensive, with Theodore's name and a phone number for his assistant. Simone picked it up a dozen times, her finger hovering over her phone's keypad, before setting it down again. What if it was a mistake? What if he'd already forgotten about her? What if this was some kind of test or joke? By Monday morning, Simone had almost talked herself out of calling. She went to work at Elegance Catering, helping set up for a corporate lunch event. Mr. Rodriguez was in a bad mood because they'd lost a big client to a competing company, and he was taking it out on everyone. "Simone, those napkins are folded wrong. Do them again." "Simone, the glasses have water spots. Clean them better." "Simone, move faster. We don't have all day." By noon, Simone was exhausted and frustrated. She took her lunch break in her car, eating a peanut butter sandwich and thinking about her life. This was it. This was what her future looked like if nothing changed. Years of low pay, demanding bosses, and struggling to make rent every month. She pulled out her phone and Theodore Whitmore's business card. Before she could change her mind again, she dialed the number. A professional-sounding woman answered on the second ring. "Mr. Whitmore's office. This is Rebecca speaking." Hi, my name is Simone Clark. Mr. Whitmore gave me his card and said to call about a possible job. Oh yes, Miss Clark. Mr. Whitmore has been expecting your call. Can you come in tomorrow at 2 o'clock for an interview? Tomorrow? Simone's heart raced. Yes. Yes, I can do that. Rebecca gave her an address downtown and told her to ask for her at the front desk. When Simone hung up, her hands were shaking. This was real. This was actually happening. The next day, Simone called in sick to work. She spent the morning getting ready, trying on every piece of clothing she owned to find something appropriate for an interview with a billionaire. She finally settled on a simple navy dress and the one pair of decent heels she hadn't sold yet. She did her makeup carefully, trying to cover the dark circles under her eyes from too many nights of bad sleep. The address Rebecca had given her was a tall glass building in the financial district. The lobby was all marble and polished steel, with security guards and a fancy reception desk. Simone felt completely out of place as she walked up to the desk. I'm here to see Rebecca. I have an appointment at 2. The receptionist checked her computer and handed Simone a visitor badge. 23rd floor. The elevators are to your right. The elevator ride up felt endless. Simone watched the floor numbers climb and tried to calm her breathing. She could do this. She'd organized dinner parties and events for years when she was married. She knew how to be professional and capable. The 23rd floor was quieter than the lobby. Soft carpet, expensive artwork on the walls, and a large desk where a woman in her 50s sat typing. You must be Simone, the woman said with a warm smile. I'm Rebecca. Mr. Whitmore is running a few minutes behind, but he'll be with you shortly. Can I get you some water or coffee? Water would be great, thank you. Rebecca brought her a glass of water in what looked like actual crystal, and Simone sat in a plush chair to wait. She looked around the office, taking in the obvious wealth and power. What was she doing here? She didn't belong in places like this anymore. Miss Clark? Rebecca called. Mr. Whitmore will see you now. Simone followed Rebecca down a hallway to a large office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Theodore Whitmore stood behind a massive desk, looking exactly as she remembered: white hair, sharp eyes, and an air of quiet authority. Miss Clark, thank you for coming. He gestured to a chair across from his desk. Please sit. Simone sat, trying not to fidget with her hands. Thank you for seeing me, Mr. Whitmore. I was starting to think you wouldn't call, he said, a slight smile on his face. Cold feet. Something like that, Simone admitted. I wasn't sure if you were serious. I'm always serious about business, Theodore said. Let me be direct with you, Miss Clark. I'm 82 years old. I've built an empire over the past 50 years, and I'm at a point in my life where I want to simplify. I still host events regularly, dinner parties, charity galas, business functions. But I'm tired of dealing with large catering companies and event planners who don't understand what I want. He leaned back in his chair. That night at my dinner party, I watched you work. You were efficient, professional, and observant. When you saw a problem, you handled it decisively. Those are exactly the qualities I need in a personal event coordinator. I'm honored that you thought of me, Simone said carefully. But I should be honest, I don't have formal training in event planning. Everything I know, I learned from managing my own home and helping friends with parties. And working for a catering company these past months, Theodore added. Don't undersell yourself, Miss Clark. I did my research. Your boss, Mr. Rodriguez, says you're the best worker he has. You're reliable, creative, and clients always comment positively on your service. Simone was surprised. You called Mr. Rodriguez? I always do my due diligence. I also learned some other things about you. You were recently divorced. Your ex-husband was Julian Banks, currently a senior sales manager at Peterson Industries. The divorce settlement was minimal, leaving you in a difficult financial position. You've been living in a studio apartment and working for minimum wage, despite the fact that you have a college degree in communications and several years of experience managing complex social situations. Simone felt her face flush. You really did your research. I told you, I'm serious about this. I want to know who I'm hiring. Theodore's expression softened. I also know what it's like to start over with nothing. I grew up poor, Miss Clark. Built my first business with money I saved from working 2 jobs. I understand what it means to struggle. He pulled out a folder and slid it across the desk to her. This is the position I'm offering. You would coordinate all my personal events. That includes guest lists, catering, venues, entertainment, everything. You'd work directly with me to understand my vision for each event and then make it happen. The pay is $80,000 a year to start, with full benefits and a performance bonus structure. $80,000. Simone's current job paid barely $24,000. She opened the folder with shaking hands and saw a formal job offer with all the details typed out. "This is incredibly generous," she managed to say. "It's what the work is worth," Theodore corrected. "There's one more thing. The job comes with an apartment. I own a building downtown with several residential units. One of them would be yours, rent-free, as part of your compensation package. It's a 2-bedroom, much nicer than where you're currently living." Simone couldn't speak. This was too much. Too good to be true. People didn't just get opportunities like this. "Why me?" she finally asked. "You could hire someone with much more experience." Theodore was quiet for a moment, looking out the window at the city below. "My wife died 5 years ago. Cancer. We were married for 48 years. She was the one who used to plan all our events, and she was brilliant at it. Since she's been gone, I've hired 3 different event coordinators, and none of them understood what I wanted. They were professional and experienced, but there was no heart in what they did." He looked back at Simone. "When I watched you at that dinner party, you reminded me of her. Not in appearance, but in the way you carried yourself. With dignity, even in a difficult situation. With kindness and strength. My wife would have done exactly what you did with that water pitcher." Simone felt tears threatening and blinked them back. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll take the job," Theodore said simply. "Give me 6 months. If you're not happy or if I'm not satisfied with your work, we part ways amicably and I'll write you a reference that will get you any job you want. But I think we'll work well together, Miss Clark." Simone looked down at the job offer in her hands. This was a lifeline. A chance to rebuild her life. A chance to be something more than the broken woman crying alone in a studio apartment. "I accept," she said. "When do I start?" Theodore smiled, and it transformed his whole face. "How about Monday? That gives you time to give notice at your current job and move into your new apartment. Rebecca will handle all the details." They shook hands, and Simone felt like she was shaking hands with her future. When she left Theodore's office an hour later, she had keys to a new apartment, information packets about Theodore's upcoming events, and a sense of possibility she hadn't felt in over a year. On the elevator ride down, Simone caught her reflection in the polished steel doors. She looked different somehow. Or maybe she just felt different. For the first time since Julian had destroyed her life, she felt like maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be okay. Simone's new apartment was on the 10th floor of a renovated building in a part of downtown she'd only ever passed through on her way to somewhere else. When Rebecca handed her the keys that Friday, Simone had expected something modest. What she found instead took her breath away. The apartment had high ceilings, large windows that let in streams of natural light, and an actual bedroom with a door that closed. There was a full kitchen with modern appliances, a living room big enough for real furniture, and a bathroom with a tub. After 8 months in a studio with peeling paint and a broken heater, this felt like a palace. The apartment came furnished with simple but quality pieces, a comfortable couch, a dining table with chairs, a real bed with a frame and headboard. Simone walked through the space, touching things gently, half afraid she might wake up and find this was all a dream. That weekend, she moved her meager belongings from the studio apartment. Everything she owned fit in her car in 2 trips. It was humbling to see how little she had left from her old life, but also freeing in a way. She was starting fresh, and this time she was building something that belonged only to her. Monday morning, Simone woke up early and got ready for her first day. She chose a professional but understated outfit and headed to Theodore's office building, her heart pounding with nervous excitement. Rebecca greeted her warmly and spent the morning showing her the office systems, calendars, and contact lists. Theodore had events scheduled for the next 6 months, everything from intimate dinner parties to large charity galas. Simone's job was to make each one perfect. "Mr. Whitmore is particular but fair," Rebecca explained. "He knows what he likes and he's not afraid to tell you when something's wrong. But he also trusts the people he hires. If he gave you this job, it's because he believes you can do it." Simone's first project was a dinner party in 2 weeks for Theodore's business associates. 20 guests for courses, wine pairings. Theodore called her into his office that afternoon to discuss his vision. "I want elegance without pretension," he said. "Good food, good wine, good conversation. Nothing flashy or trendy. Just quality." "I understand," Simone said, taking notes. "Do you have dietary restrictions I should know about?" "Mrs. Patterson is vegetarian. George Chin doesn't eat shellfish. Other than that, everyone eats everything." They spent an hour going over details. Theodore had opinions about everything, the flowers, the music, even the timing of courses. But he also listened when Simone made suggestions, and several times he nodded approvingly at her ideas. "You have good instincts," he said when they finished. "I'm looking forward to seeing what you come up with." The dinner party was a success. Simone worked for days to get every detail right, and on the night of the event, everything came together beautifully. The food was excellent, the pacing was perfect, and the guests seemed relaxed and happy. Theodore caught her eye during the main course and gave her a small nod of approval that made her want to cry with relief. After that first success, Simone threw herself into her work. She coordinated a charity auction that raised twice the expected amount. She planned a birthday celebration for Theodore's oldest friend that brought the elderly man to tears. She handled a last-minute venue change for a business dinner when the original location had a kitchen fire. She was good at this work and she loved it. For the first time in years, Simone felt like she was using her brain and her skills for something meaningful. Every morning, she woke up excited to go to work instead of dreading it. But it wasn't just the work that made her happy. It was Theodore himself. Over the months, as they spent more time together planning events and discussing details, Simone and Theodore developed an easy rapport. He treated her like an equal, always asking for her opinions and taking her suggestions seriously. He told her stories about building his business from nothing, about his late wife, about his failures and successes. "You remind me of myself when I was younger," he said one afternoon as they reviewed plans for a gala. "Hungry to prove yourself. Determined not to let circumstances define you." "I'm just trying to do a good job," Simone said. "You're doing more than a good job. You're building something." Theodore set down the papers he'd been reviewing. "Tell me something, Simone. What do you want from life? 5 years from now, what does success look like?" No one had asked her that in years. When she was married to Julian, all her dreams had been about their shared future, the house, the children, the life they would build together. After the divorce, survival had been her only goal. "I want to never feel powerless again," she said slowly. "I want security. I want to know that no one can take everything from me the way Julian did." Theodore nodded thoughtfully. "Financial security is important, but it's not everything. What about fulfillment? Purpose?" "I don't know," Simone admitted. "I'm still figuring that out." "That's fair. You're rebuilding. That takes time." He smiled at her. "For what it's worth, I think you have more potential than you realize. You're smart, capable, and you have integrity. Those qualities will take you far if you let them." Simone felt her eyes sting with unexpected tears. "Thank you. That means a lot, especially coming from you." "I mean it," Theodore said firmly. "I don't give empty compliments." As the months went by, Theodore began including Simone in more than just event planning. He invited her to business meetings, asking for her perspective on presentations and proposals. He introduced her to his associates and made sure they knew she was more than just his assistant. "This is Simone Clark," he'd say. "She has one of the sharpest minds in this room. You should listen to her." He began teaching her about his businesses, the hotels, the real estate holdings, the investment portfolio. He explained how he'd built his empire, the risks he'd taken, the lessons he'd learned. Simone absorbed it all like a sponge, asking questions and taking notes. "Why are you teaching me all this?" she asked him one day. Theodore looked at her seriously. "Because you're capable of understanding it, and because knowledge is power. The more you understand about how wealth is built and maintained, the better equipped you'll be to build your own." One evening, about 8 months into her job, Simone was working late in Theodore's office, finalizing details for an upcoming charity gala. Theodore came in with 2 cups of tea and sat down across from her. "Take a break," he said, handing her a cup. "You've been at this for 4 hours straight." "I want everything to be perfect," Simone said, but she accepted the tea gratefully. "It will be. You always deliver perfection." Theodore sipped his tea. "I want to ask you something personal, and you can tell me if I'm overstepping." Simone looked up. "Okay. Do you ever hear from your ex-husband?" The question surprised her. She and Theodore had never really discussed Julian beyond the basic facts of the divorce. "No. I blocked his number and all his social media. As far as I know, he's happy with his new wife." "And how do you feel about that?" "Honestly, I don't feel much of anything anymore." Simone thought about it. "At first I was devastated, then angry, but now, I just don't care. He's not part of my life and I've moved on." "Have you?" Theodore asked gently. "Moved on? I think so. I'm not the same person I was when I was married to him. That woman was lost and small. She let someone else define her worth." Simone met Theodore's eyes. "I'm not that woman anymore." Theodore smiled. "No, you're certainly not. You've become someone remarkable, Simone. I hope you see that. I'm trying to, she said softly. Theodore's health began declining around the 1-year mark. He never complained, but Simone noticed he moved slower, got tired more easily and sometimes looked pale. One day she found him in his office with his head in his hands. Theodore, she said concerned. Are you okay? He looked up and she saw something in his eyes she'd never seen before, fear. I'm fine. Just tired. You should see a doctor. I have many doctors. He sighed heavily. Simone, come in and close the door. She did, her heart pounding. Theodore gestured for her to sit. I have cancer, he said bluntly. Pancreatic. They caught it late. The doctors have given me 6 months, maybe a bit more. Simone felt like someone had punched her in the chest. No. There must be something they can do. Treatment, surgery. I'm 83 years old. The treatment would be worse than the disease at this point, and it likely wouldn't work anyway. Theodore's voice was calm, accepting. I've had a good life, Simone. A long life. I'm not afraid of what's coming. Tears streamed down Simone's face. But I just found you. You're like a father to me. And you're like a daughter to me, Theodore said, his own eyes damp. That's actually something I wanted to talk to you about. Over the next few weeks, Theodore continued working but at a slower pace. He spent more time telling Simone about his vision for his businesses, his hopes for his legacy. He introduced her to his lawyers and his board of directors, making it clear that she was someone they should respect and listen to. I don't have children, he told her one evening. My wife and I tried for years but it wasn't meant to be. When she died, I thought my legacy would just be my businesses. But then I met you and I realized that legacy can be about more than blood. Simone didn't fully understand what he meant, but she was too worried about his declining health to ask questions. She just tried to make his days easier, to bring him joy with the events she planned, to be the daughter he'd never had. What she didn't know was that Theodore had already made his decision. He'd watched her for over a year. He'd seen her character, her strength, her integrity. He'd seen her learn and grow and become someone extraordinary. And he'd decided that his empire should be hers. Theodore Whitmore sat in his lawyer's office on a cold afternoon in late September, just 2 months before the gala. His body ached with a pain that was becoming constant, but his mind was still sharp. He needed it to be sharp for what he was about to do. Are you absolutely certain about this, Theodore? Walter Patterson had been Theodore's lawyer for 30 years. He was the only one who could question Theodore's decisions without getting shut down. This is an extraordinary step. I've never been more certain of anything in my life, Theodore said firmly. Except maybe when I married my wife. Walter adjusted his glasses and looked at the documents spread across his desk. I need to make sure you understand what you're doing. You're leaving your entire estate valued at approximately $4.7 billion to an employee you've known for less than 2 years. You have cousins, Theodore. Distant family who could contest this. Let them try, Theodore said. My cousins have never cared about me or my wife. They only started calling after she died and they only wanted money. I don't owe them anything. What about your business associates? Your board members? Some of them have been with you for decades. And they've been well compensated for their work. They'll continue to be compensated. But they don't need my personal fortune. Theodore leaned forward. Walter, I've built this empire over 50 years. I know what it takes to steward this kind of wealth and power. It takes integrity, vision, the ability to put principles over profit. How many of my business associates have those qualities? Walter was silent. Exactly, Theodore continued. Most of them are good at making money, but they're not good people. They'd carve up my estate, sell off the pieces, and forget everything I've built within a year. Simone won't do that. You sound very sure of her character. I am. I've been watching her for 18 months, Walter. I've seen how she works, how she treats people, how she handles pressure and success. Theodore's voice softened. She reminds me of my wife. The same strength wrapped in gentleness. The same intelligence that people underestimate. The same moral compass that never wavers. Walter made some notes. What about Miss Clark herself? Have you discussed this with her? Is she prepared to inherit and manage billions of dollars? No. She doesn't know. Theodore smiled slightly. And she won't know until the will is read. I want her to have the chance to grieve me as a friend, not as a benefactor. I don't want our final months together to be complicated by money. That's very kind, but it's also going to be an enormous shock for her. Yes, it will be. Theodore thought about Simone, about the woman she'd been when they met, broken and invisible, and the woman she'd become over their time together. But she can handle it. I've been preparing her without her even realizing it. All those business meetings I've brought her to, all the lessons about my investments and properties, all the introductions to the right people. She's been learning. She's ready. What if she doesn't want this responsibility? Theodore had considered that possibility. Then she can sell it all and live off the proceeds. The money will still be hers. But I don't think she will. Simone has something special in her. She's been lost and powerless, and now I'm giving her the means to never be lost or powerless again. I think she'll rise to meet this challenge. Walter looked at him for a long moment. You really love her like a daughter, don't you? I do. She's the child my wife and I never had. And I'm going to give her the future she deserves. Theodore's voice was firm despite his physical weakness. Draw up the papers, Walter. Make it ironclad. I want no loopholes for greedy relatives or business associates to exploit. Every penny goes to Simone, with provisions for her education and managing the estate and a team of advisors to help her transition. Over the next few weeks, Walter and his team created the most comprehensive will they'd ever drafted. Theodore reviewed every clause, making sure Simone would be protected from anyone who might try to take advantage of her inexperience. He set up trusts, advisory boards, and safeguards. He also made one other crucial decision. The will would be read publicly at his annual charity gala. He wanted the world to know his decision. He wanted no room for doubt or whispered accusations of undue influence. He wanted Simone's inheritance to be announced in front of hundreds of witnesses, including every business leader and society figure in the city. Including, if Theodore had planned correctly, her ex-husband Julian. Theodore had done his research on Julian Banks. He knew Julian had recently made senior management at Peterson Industries. He knew Julian and his new wife Brooke ran in social circles that would kill for an invitation to Theodore's gala. He knew they would come if invited, eager to network and be seen. And Theodore wanted them there. He wanted Julian to see what he'd thrown away. He wanted Julian to watch as the woman he'd discarded as worthless was revealed to be worth billions. It was petty perhaps for a man of Theodore's age and accomplishments. But he'd seen the pain in Simone's eyes when she talked about her divorce. He'd seen how Julian had crushed her spirit and taken everything from her. Theodore wanted Julian to understand in the most public way possible that he'd made the biggest mistake of his life. Make sure Julian Banks and his wife are on the guest list for the gala, Theodore told Rebecca one afternoon. Rebecca looked surprised. I don't think they've been to any of your events before. No, but they've been trying to get invitations for years. His company does business with some of my associates. Send them a personal invitation. Make them feel important. Whatever you say, boss. Theodore also had to plan his death carefully. He didn't want to die alone in a hospital hooked up to machines. He wanted dignity. He wanted peace. His doctors agreed to help him manage his pain at home, and Theodore made arrangements for hospice care for his final days. But first there was the gala. He had to live long enough for the gala. One evening, about a month before the event, Theodore called Simone into his office. She came in carrying fabric samples and menu options, her mind clearly on the planning. Sit down, Simone. Forget about the gala details for a moment. She looked worried. Are you feeling okay? Do you need me to call your doctor? I'm fine. Or as fine as I can be anyway. Theodore smiled at her. I want to talk to you about something important. I need you to promise me something. Anything, Simone said immediately. After I'm gone, I need you to be brave. I need you to trust that I knew what I was doing even if it doesn't make sense at first. Can you promise me that? Simone's eyes filled with tears. Theodore, please don't talk like that. You're going to be around for a long time still. We both know that's not true. He reached across the desk and took her hand. Listen to me. You've become so much stronger over these past months. You've grown into someone remarkable. I'm proud of you, Simone. I'm proud to know you. You've given me everything, Simone said, crying now. This job, this apartment, this chance to rebuild my life. I'll never be able to repay you. You already have. You've given an old man purpose in his final year. You've made me feel like I have family again. Theodore squeezed her hand. Now, I need you to do something for me. I need you to make this gala the best event you've ever planned. It's my last one and it needs to be perfect. It will be. I promise. I know it will. And Simone. He waited until she met his eyes. Wear something spectacular. You deserve to shine. Simone left his office wiping her eyes, and Theodore sat back in his chair, exhausted but satisfied. Everything was in place. The will was finalized. The gala was planned. Julian would be there to witness his ex-wife's transformation. Theodore just had to make it to the gala date. After that, he could rest. His doctor had given him 8 months. He'd made it to 18. Just a few more weeks. He could do a few more weeks. 2 nights before the gala, Theodore died peacefully in his sleep at home. His hospice nurse found him in the morning, a slight smile on his face, looking more at rest than he had in months. Rebecca called Simone with the news. Simone sat in her apartment, phone in hand, feeling like the world had stopped spinning. Theodore was gone. The man who'd saved her, believed in her, become her family, gone. She cried for hours, deep wrenching sobs that came from the depths of her soul. She'd known this was coming, but knowing didn't make it hurt any less. When the tears finally stopped, she thought about his final request. He'd wanted the gala to go on. He'd wanted it to be perfect. He'd made her promise to be brave. Simone called Rebecca back. Does the gala still happen? According to Theodore's instructions, yes. He was very specific about that. He even wrote you a letter that I'm supposed to give you tonight. The letter arrived by courier an hour later. Simone opened it with shaking hands. My dear Simone, it began in Theodore's neat handwriting. If you're reading this, then I'm gone and you're probably crying. Stop crying. You look terrible when you cry. Simone laughed through her tears. The gala must happen. I know you're grieving, but this event is more important than you realize. Trust me one last time. Wear the dress Rebecca picked out for you. Wear the diamond necklace I gave you last month. Hold your head high. And when my will is read, remember that you deserve everything you're about to receive. You've earned it through your character, your work, and your heart. Be brave, my dear girl. Be strong. And build a future that would make your old friend proud. With all my love, Theodore. Simone folded the letter carefully and held it to her chest. She didn't understand what he meant about the will, but she understood that this gala was Theodore's final gift to her, and she would make it perfect for him. She wiped her eyes, straightened her shoulders, and got back to work. She had a gala to finish planning, a spectacular dress to wear, and a promise to keep. And somewhere on the guest list, Julian and Brooke had already confirmed their attendance, having no idea what they were walking into. The morning after Theodore's death, Simone woke up in her apartment feeling hollowed out. For a moment she forgot, and then reality crashed back in. Theodore was gone. The man who'd become her mentor, her friend, her father figure, gone forever. She wanted to stay in bed and cry. She wanted to cancel the gala and hide from the world. But Theodore's letter sat on her nightstand, and his words echoed in her head. Be brave, my dear girl. Simone got up. She showered, dressed, and went to Theodore's office. Rebecca was already there, red-eyed but composed. The board members want to meet with you this afternoon, Rebecca said. They have questions about the gala and other matters. I'll be there. Simone looked at the stack of files on her desk, all the final details for the gala that was now just 2 days away. Has anyone tried to cancel the event? Theodore's lawyer, Mr. Patterson, sent a message to everyone this morning. The gala will proceed as planned. Theodore's instructions were very clear about that. The next 48 hours were a blur. Simone threw herself into the final preparations, using work to keep grief at bay. She confirmed the catering, checked the floral arrangements, reviewed the seating chart, and coordinated with the hotel staff. Every detail had to be perfect. She owed Theodore that much. The board meeting was tense. 12 men and women who'd worked with Theodore for years, all suddenly concerned about the future of his empire. They asked questions about the gala, about whether it was appropriate to proceed so soon after his death. Theodore wanted this event to happen, Simone said firmly. He was very specific about that in his final instructions. We're going forward. But what's the point now? One board member asked. Theodore isn't here to enjoy it. The point is that this was important to him, Simone said. She was surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. And I'm going to make sure his wishes are honored. The board members exchanged glances but didn't push further. Simone had the feeling there was something they knew that she didn't, but she was too busy to worry about it. On the afternoon before the gala, Rebecca called Simone into her office. Theodore left something for you to wear tomorrow night. She opened a garment bag to reveal a dress that made Simone gasp. It was a deep emerald green, made of silk that seemed to shimmer when it moved. The design was elegant and sophisticated, a fitted bodice with a flowing skirt, off-the-shoulder sleeves, and delicate beading that caught the light. This must have cost a fortune, Simone breathed. Theodore wanted you to have it. He picked it out himself about 2 months ago. Rebecca smiled through her tears. He said you needed to shine. There was also a box from a jewelry store. Inside was the diamond necklace Theodore had given her a month ago, along with matching earrings she'd never seen before. He thought of everything, Simone said softly. That evening, Simone went home and tried on the dress. It fit perfectly, like it had been made for her body. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back. This wasn't the broken, invisible woman from 2 years ago. This was someone else. Someone stronger. Someone who belonged in rooms full of powerful people. She thought about Julian and Brooke, who would be at the gala tomorrow. She'd known they were on the guest list. Theodore had shown her the final list weeks ago, and their names had jumped out at her. She'd asked him about it. They're connected to people who matter, Theodore had said. And besides, don't you think it's time for them to see who you've become? Simone had agreed, though the thought of seeing Julian again made her anxious. She hadn't spoken to him in over 2 years. She'd built a whole new life and he had no place in it. But part of her wondered what he would think when he saw her at this prestigious event, no longer his downtrodden ex-wife but Theodore Whitmore's personal coordinator. The night before the gala, Simone couldn't sleep. She lay in bed thinking about Theodore, about everything he'd taught her, about the family she'd found in him. She thought about his mysterious letter and his insistence that she trust him. She thought about the way the board members had looked at her during the meeting, like they knew a secret. Finally, around 3 in the morning, she got up and made tea. She sat by her window looking out at the city lights and made a silent promise to Theodore. I'll make tomorrow perfect for you. And I'll be brave whatever that means. I promise. The day of the gala dawned gray and cloudy, but by afternoon the sun had broken through. Simone arrived at the Grand Imperial Hotel at noon to oversee the final setup. The ballroom was being transformed into something magical, flowers everywhere, crystal chandeliers sparkling, tables set with fine china and crystal glasses. Everything looks beautiful, Rebecca said, coming to stand beside her. Theodore would be proud. I hope so. Simone checked her watch. I need to go home and get ready. I'll be back by 6 before the guests start arriving. At her apartment, Simone took her time getting ready. She styled her hair in soft waves. She did her makeup carefully, subtle but polished. She put on the emerald dress and the diamond jewelry. When she looked in the mirror, she saw confidence looking back at her. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Looking forward to tonight. Julian. Simone stared at the message. Julian must have gotten her number from the event information. She'd forgotten that all the VIP guests were sent her contact info in case they had questions. She deleted the text without responding and blocked the number. Julian had no right to contact her. No right to her time or attention. Tonight wasn't about him. It was about Theodore. Simone arrived at the hotel at 6:30. Guests were already starting to arrive, and she greeted them professionally, making sure everyone found their seats and felt welcome. She saw people she recognized from Theodore's business circle, CEOs, politicians, celebrities, philanthropists. They all expressed condolences about Theodore's death and praised the event. At 7:15 she saw them. Julian and Brooke walking into the ballroom like they owned the place. Julian wore an expensive suit, his hair perfectly styled. Brooke was in a red dress that was probably designer, her arm linked through Julian's possessively. Simone's heart pounded, but she kept her face calm. She watched them scan the room, clearly looking for important people to network with. Julian's gaze swept over her once, then stopped and came back. His eyes widened slightly, he'd recognized her. Simone turned away before he could approach. She had work to do. She helped coordinate the waitstaff, made sure the timing was perfect and kept everything running smoothly. But she was always aware of where Julian was in the room, like a splinter under her skin. She saw him pointing her out to Brooke, saw them whispering to each other. She knew what they were probably saying. That's Simone. My ex-wife. I didn't know she worked for Whitmore. Let them talk. Let them wonder. Simone had more important things to focus on. At 8 o'clock, the doors to the ballroom closed. All the guests were seated. The lights dimmed slightly and Mr. Patterson walked to the stage with a microphone. The room grew quiet. Simone stood near the back of the ballroom, her hands clasped in front of her. This was it, the moment Theodore had planned for. Whatever was about to happen, she needed to be brave. She took a deep breath and waited for her world to change. The ballroom fell silent as Walter Patterson walked to the microphone. Simone stood near the wall, her heart racing for reasons she didn't understand. She'd planned every moment of this event, but Theodore's death had changed things. This wasn't just a gala anymore. It was something else. Something important. Ladies and gentlemen, Walter's voice carried through the speakers, professional and solemn. Thank you all for attending this evening. We have gathered you here for a very important announcement regarding Mr. Theodore Whitmore's estate. The crowd murmured with interest. Simone saw people leaning forward in their seats. Money always got people's attention, especially this much money. As many of you know, Walter continued, his voice heavy with emotion now, Mr. Whitmore passed away peacefully in his sleep 2 nights ago. The murmuring grew louder. Some people clearly hadn't heard the news yet. Simone saw genuine sadness on some faces and calculating interest on others. Theodore had been right. Some of these people had cared about him as a person, and others had only cared about his wealth. Mr. Whitmore left very specific instructions for tonight, Walter said. He wanted his will to be read publicly at this gala, in front of all of you. He said transparency was important, and he wanted no confusion about his final wishes. Now the room was completely silent. Simone could feel the tension, the anticipation. Everyone wanted to know who would inherit billions. She glanced across the room and saw Julian watching the stage intently, Brooke whispering something in his ear. Walter pulled out a document, thick paper that looked official and important. I'll read the relevant portion now. These are Mr. Whitmore's exact words, recorded and witnessed by multiple attorneys 6 months ago. 6 months ago. Simone's mind raced. That was shortly after the event where she'd organized Theodore's birthday celebration. Why then? I, Theodore James Whitmore, Walter read, his voice clear and carrying, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament. Simone's hands were shaking. She clasped them tighter. After much consideration and observation, I leave the entirety of my estate, including all financial assets, properties, business holdings, and investments, to Miss Simone Clark. For a moment, Simone thought she'd heard wrong. The name couldn't be hers. That made no sense. She must have misunderstood. But the room had erupted. People were gasping, talking loudly, standing up from their seats. Cameras flashed from the news reporters Theodore had invited. Everyone was looking around, trying to figure out who Simone Clark was. Walter kept reading, his voice rising to be heard over the commotion. Miss Clark has demonstrated over the past 2 years the character, integrity, and wisdom necessary to steward this fortune responsibly. She has been like a daughter to me, and I trust her completely with my legacy. Simone couldn't move. She stood frozen against the wall, her breath coming in short gasps. This couldn't be real. Theodore had left her everything? His entire empire? The estimated total value of this estate, Walter said, and now he was looking directly at Simone, having spotted her in the back, is $4.7 billion. $4.7 billion. The words didn't make sense. They were too big to be real. Simone felt like she was underwater, everything muffled and distant. People were turning in their seats, following Walter's gaze, pointing at her. Security guards were already moving toward her position. Theodore must have arranged that too. Rebecca appeared at her elbow, her face wet with tears but smiling. Come on, Rebecca said gently. You need to go to the front. Simone let herself be guided through the crowd. People moved aside as she walked, their faces showing shock, confusion, some anger, some excitement. She felt their eyes on her like physical pressure. And then she saw Julian's face. He was standing now, his mouth hanging open in pure shock. His face had gone completely white, like all the blood had drained out of it. Brooke next to him looked equally stunned, her hand over her mouth. Julian's eyes met Simone's as she walked past, and she saw it all there, the disbelief, the regret, the dawning realization of what he'd thrown away. He'd discarded her like garbage, taken everything from her, left her with nothing. And now she was worth billions. Simone didn't slow down. She didn't smile or acknowledge him. She just kept walking toward the stage, her head high, her posture straight. She was done being invisible. Walter met her at the stage stairs and helped her up. The lights were bright and she could barely see the crowd beyond them. Her hands shook as Walter handed her a leather-bound folder. This is for you, he said quietly. Theodore wanted you to have this tonight. Read it later when you're alone. Simone took the folder with numb fingers. Walter turned back to the microphone. Mr. Whitmore left a video message he wanted played tonight, Walter announced. If we could dim the lights, please. The lights lowered. A screen descended from the ceiling. And then Theodore's face appeared, and Simone had to bite her lip to keep from crying out. He looked tired in the video, but his eyes were warm and full of life. He was sitting in his office, the one where they'd spent so many hours together. Hello, everyone, Theodore's voice filled the ballroom. If you're watching this, then I'm gone, and you all just found out that I left everything to Simone Clark. I imagine some of you are confused, some are angry, and some are wondering who she is. A ripple of nervous laughter went through the crowd. Simone is my friend. My family. The daughter my wife and I never had. Theodore's voice was firm, allowing no argument. Over the past 2 years, I've watched her rebuild herself from nothing. I've seen her character tested repeatedly, and she's never compromised her integrity. She's smart, capable, kind, and strong. Exactly the kind of person who should have power and wealth. Theodore paused, looking directly at the camera. Some of you will think this is foolish. That I should have left my fortune to family members or business associates. But I've watched those people too, and most of them care more about money than people. Simone is different. She understands that wealth is a responsibility, not just a privilege. He smiled, and it was so familiar that Simone felt tears streaming down her face. To Simone, if you're watching this, know that I'm proud of you. You've earned this. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Don't let anyone make you feel like you don't deserve it. Build a future that matters. Help people who need it. And be happy, my dear girl. That's all I want for you. The video ended. The screen went up. The lights came back on. And Simone stood on the stage in front of hundreds of people, tears running down her face, now officially one of the richest women in the country. The room exploded with noise again. Reporters were shouting questions. People were standing, talking loudly, taking photos. Walter gestured for security to move forward, creating a barrier around Simone. We'll handle the press, he said to her quietly. You don't have to answer any questions tonight. Let's get you out of here. But before they could move, someone pushed through the crowd at the front. Julian. He looked desperate now, his earlier shock replaced with something else, calculation maybe, or regret. Simone, he called out. Simone, wait. I need to talk to you. Security moved to block him, but Julian kept trying to push forward. Please? Simone, it's me. We need to talk about this. Simone looked down at him from the stage. This man who had destroyed her life. Who had told her she was boring, that she'd let herself go, that his mistress made him feel alive. This man who had taken everything from her and left her with nothing. He wanted to talk to her now that she had billions. Simone spoke into the microphone, her voice carrying through the whole ballroom. Security, please escort that man out. He's not welcome here. Julian's face went from desperate to angry. You can't do this. We were married. We have history. We have nothing, Simone said coldly. We're divorced. You made your choice 2 years ago. Now I'm making mine. Security guards took Julian's arms, starting to pull him toward the exit. He struggled against them, still trying to talk to her. Think about what you're doing, he shouted. You need someone who knows you. Someone you can trust. I made mistakes, Simone, but we can work through them. Simone turned away from him. She wouldn't give him another second of her attention. Security hauled him out of the ballroom, and she could hear him shouting even as the doors closed behind him. Brooke had disappeared into the crowd, probably too embarrassed to face Simone. Good. Let her hide. Walter touched Simone's arm gently. There's a private room set up for you. We need to discuss details, sign some papers, and get you away from the press. Simone nodded and let him lead her off the stage. As they walked through a back corridor, she felt like she was floating. Nothing felt real. $4.7 billion. Theodore's empire. All hers. In the private room, Walter's team of lawyers explained everything. The scope of the inheritance, the property she now owned, the businesses she controlled, the investment portfolios. It was overwhelming, almost incomprehensible. Theodore set up a transition team to help you, Walter explained. Financial advisors, business managers, legal counsel. You won't have to handle this alone. He made sure you'd have support. Why? Simone whispered. Why did he do this? Walter smiled. Because he loved you like a daughter. Because he believed in you. And because he wanted to make sure you'd never be powerless again. Simone opened the leather folder Theodore had left for her. Inside was a handwritten letter, pages long, explaining his decision. He detailed everything, how he'd watched her at that first dinner party, how he'd tested her character over the months, how she'd reminded him of his wife, how he'd come to love her. You deserve a life of security and purpose, the letter said. You deserve never to feel invisible again. Use this wealth wisely, my dear Simone. Help people. Build things that matter. And don't let your past define your future. You are so much more than what Julian made you believe you were. Simone held the letter to her chest and cried. Not from sadness this time, but from overwhelming gratitude and love for the man who'd saved her life in every way that mattered. Outside the room, she could hear the gala continuing, people talking excitedly about what had happened. Her life had just changed forever. Tomorrow she would be famous. The press would want to know everything about her. People would have opinions and judgments. But tonight, in this quiet room, Simone let herself feel the magnitude of what Theodore had given her. Not just wealth but freedom. Power. The ability to never be erased or invisible again. She dried her eyes, straightened her shoulders and looked at Walter. What do I need to do next? First we get you home safely. Then tomorrow we start the transition process. You'll meet with the advisory board, the business managers, all the key people. But for tonight you should rest. It's been an overwhelming day. Simone nodded. As she was escorted out a back entrance to avoid the press, she caught a glimpse of the ballroom one last time. The event was still going on, people mingling and talking. The gala had become something different than she'd planned, not just a charity event, but the night that Simone Clark stopped being invisible and became someone the whole world would know. In the car on the way home, Simone looked out the window at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Julian was probably having a breakdown, realizing he'd thrown away a woman who was now worth billions. Somewhere, Brooke was learning that being the other woman came with consequences. But Simone didn't care about them anymore. They were her past and she was done looking backward. Tomorrow her new life would begin. Tonight, she would mourn the man who'd made it all possible. "Thank you, Theodore," she whispered to the stars. "Thank you for seeing me." The media storm started before Simone woke up the next morning. Her phone was flooded with notifications, hundreds of missed calls, thousands of texts from numbers she didn't recognize, and her social media accounts had been found and bombarded with messages. The security team Theodore had arranged took over immediately, changing her numbers and setting up protection. The headlines were everywhere. Mystery heiress inherits billions. Who is Simone Clark? Billionaire leaves everything to unknown woman. News vans parked outside her apartment building. Reporters tried to sneak past security. Everyone wanted the story. Walter and his team arrived at her apartment by 9 in the morning. They'd arranged for a moving company. She couldn't stay here anymore, not with the press attention. Theodore's will had included a penthouse apartment in one of his properties, with actual security and privacy. "We'll handle the media," Walter assured her as they coordinated the move. "You don't have to talk to anyone until you're ready. For now, we focus on the transition." The next few weeks were a blur of meetings, paperwork, and learning. Simone met with Theodore's business managers, who walked her through every aspect of the empire. Real estate holdings across the country, hotel chains, technology investments, charitable foundations. It was almost too much to comprehend. But Simone had been paying attention during all those months when Theodore taught her about his businesses. She understood more than anyone expected. She asked smart questions and made informed decisions. The business managers who'd been skeptical at first slowly began to respect her. "You're a quick learner," one of them admitted after a particularly complex financial meeting. Theodore chose well. Simone threw herself into understanding every detail of her inheritance. She met with hotel managers, reviewed investment portfolios and studied business strategies. She worked 12-hour days, driven by a need to prove she deserved this opportunity. But it wasn't all work. One afternoon, about 3 weeks after the gala, Simone sat in Theodore's old office, now her office, and made a decision. She called Walter. "I want to start a foundation in Theodore's name," she said, "focused on helping women rebuild their lives after divorce or domestic situations. Job training, housing assistance, legal aid, everything they need to start over." "That's a wonderful idea," Walter said. "Theodore would have loved that." "Call it the Theodore Whitmore Second Chances Foundation," Simone said. She thought about the woman she'd been 2 years ago, broken, alone, invisible. "I want to help people who feel like their lives are over. I want to show them that second chances are possible." The foundation launched 2 months later with a massive endowment from Simone's personal fortune. The press covered it extensively, and suddenly Simone wasn't just the mystery heiress anymore. She was the philanthropist, the businesswoman, the success story. Meanwhile, Julian kept trying to contact her. He sent emails that her assistant filtered out. He tried to approach her building but security turned him away. He gave an interview to a gossip magazine claiming their divorce had been amicable and he'd always known she was special. Simone's legal team sent him a cease and desist letter. She had no interest in his attention or his regrets. One morning, Simone's assistant buzzed her office. "There's a Brooke Banks here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's important." Simone was surprised. She'd assumed Brooke would have the good sense to stay away. "Send her in." Brooke walked into the office looking nothing like the confident woman who'd hung on Julian's arm at the gala. She looked tired, her makeup not quite covering the circles under her eyes. "Simone, thank you for seeing me," Brooke said, hovering nervously near the door. "I have 5 minutes," Simone said coolly. "What do you want?" "I wanted to apologize. For everything. For the affair, for hurting you, for all of it." Brooke twisted her hands together. "I was young and stupid and I thought I was in love. I didn't think about what I was doing to you." Simone leaned back in her chair and studied the woman who'd helped destroy her marriage. She waited for anger to rise up, but she felt nothing. Just indifference. "Okay," Simone said. "Is that all?" "I also wanted to ask." Brooke hesitated. "Things with Julian aren't good. He's obsessed with getting back in contact with you. He's not the man I thought he was. I'm thinking about leaving him and I was hoping maybe your foundation could help me?" Simone almost laughed. The audacity was almost impressive. "My foundation helps women who've been victimized, Brooke. You weren't a victim. You were an active participant in destroying someone else's life. The answer is no." "Please, Let me be clear," Simone said, her voice firm but not cruel. "I don't forgive you. I don't wish you harm, but I also don't owe you anything. You made your choices. Now you have to live with them. Just like I had to live with the consequences of your choices." Brooke's eyes filled with tears. "I understand. I'm sorry for bothering you." After Brooke left, Simone sat in her office looking out at the city. She thought seeing Brooke would make her angry or hurt. Instead, she just felt free. These people had no power over her anymore. They were irrelevant to her new life. 4 months after inheriting Theodore's fortune, Simone had settled into her role. She'd moved into the penthouse, furnished it with pieces she loved, and created a home that felt like hers. She attended business meetings, made investment decisions, and ran the foundation that was already helping hundreds of women. She'd also started making changes to Theodore's empire, putting her own stamp on it. She launched new initiatives, updated policies, and made the businesses more focused on sustainability and social responsibility. Some of the old guard resisted at first, but Simone held firm. This was her company now, and she would run it according to her values. She was standing in her office one afternoon, reviewing plans for a new hotel project, when her assistant buzzed again. "There's a Dr. Nathan Cross here. He says you met at the charity event last month." Simone remembered. Nathan Cross was a surgeon who'd been at the Children's Hospital fundraiser she'd attended. They talked for over an hour about his work with pediatric patients, and he'd made her laugh with stories about hospital life. He'd asked for her number, but she'd politely declined, still getting used to her new life. "Send him in." Nathan walked in with an easy smile. He was handsome in a comfortable way, warm brown eyes, casual confidence, and that infectious smile. He held a bouquet of sunflowers. "I hope this isn't too forward," he said. "But I haven't been able to stop thinking about our conversation at the fundraiser. I wanted to ask you to dinner. No business, no networking. Just dinner with someone who'd like to get to know you better." Simone took the sunflowers, her favorite, though she'd never told him that. "How did you know I like sunflowers?" "I didn't. I just thought they matched your smile." Nathan's eyes were kind, with no calculation in them. "So what do you say? Dinner?" Simone thought about it. She'd been so focused on work and the foundation that she hadn't thought about her personal life. But Nathan had talked to her at that fundraiser before he knew who she was or how much money she had. He'd been interested in her thoughts, her opinions, her as a person. "Dinner sounds nice," she said. "But I should warn you, my life is complicated right now." "Everyone's life is complicated," Nathan said. "I still think you're worth the effort." Their first dinner was at a quiet restaurant where Nathan knew the owner. They talked for hours about everything except money and business. He told her about his work, his dreams of opening a free clinic for underprivileged children. She told him about her plans for the foundation, about Theodore and how much she missed him, about the woman she used to be and the woman she was becoming. "You're remarkable," Nathan said at the end of the night. "I hope you know that." "I'm starting to believe it," Simone said honestly. They started seeing each other regularly. Nathan never asked about her money. He paid for their dates with his own income, and he seemed genuinely uncomfortable when she tried to help fund his clinic project. "I'll accept a donation from your foundation," he said with a smile. "But I'm not dating you for your money, Simone. I'm dating you because you make me laugh, because you're brilliant, and because I like who I am when I'm with you." 6 months after the gala, Simone stood in her office looking out at the city. Her city now, in a way. She'd built a life she never could have imagined. She had purpose, power, security, and freedom. She had friends, staff who respected her, and business associates who'd learned to value her judgment. She'd also heard through the rumor mill that Julian and Brooke had divorced. Apparently, the stress of his obsession with Simone and Brooke's regret over the affair had torn them apart. Simone felt nothing when she heard the news. Their relationship wasn't her concern anymore. Her phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. "Still on for tonight? I promise I'm cooking something edible this time." Simone smiled. Nathan had been trying to impress her with his cooking skills, with mixed results. But she loved that he tried, loved his humor and his kindness and the way he looked at her like she was the most interesting person in the world. "Looking forward to it," she texted back. As the sun set over the city, Simone thought about the past 2 years. She thought about the woman who'd been invisible at her own divorce, who'd cried alone in a studio apartment, who'd thought her life was over at 32. That woman was gone. In her place was someone stronger, wiser, and more capable than she'd ever imagined she could be. Someone who'd taken the most painful moment of her life and used it as fuel to become extraordinary. Simone picked up the photo of Theodore she kept on her desk. It was from the last gala they'd planned together, both of them laughing at something he'd said. "I did it," she told his picture softly. "I'm building a future that matters. I hope you're proud." She could almost hear his reply in her head. "I was always proud of you, my dear girl." Simone set down the photo and gathered her things. She had a dinner to get to, a man who made her happy to see, and a whole life ahead of her. A life full of possibilities, power, and purpose. A life where she would never be invisible again. The sun set over the city as Simone left her office, her head high and her future bright. She'd taken her second chance and built something beautiful from the ashes of her old life. And she was just getting started.